Today's episode is sponsored by Assist Pro.
At the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm really sorry that you have to do this part of the business because this is the grossest part, but are you okay to take it? And she would be like, oh my God, I'm in my happy place, you know? So endlessly fascinating that someone would like some of that garbage that she has to do, and endlessly infuriating because I'm difficult.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Rocket Fuel Podcast, where visionary and integrator duos from entrepreneurial companies share a behind-the-scenes look at their relationship. These amazing leaders blend their unique skills to create Rocket Fuel. I'm your host, Mark C. Winters, co-author of Rocket Fuel and an expert EOS implementer. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking with Vellenga and Jennifer Rettele-Thomas, who goes by JRT. They are the founders of Voice First World, a communication coaching company that helps leaders harness the power of effective communication. Gen V is the visionary, and JRT works as the integrator. But because their company is still small, they each hold more than one role in the business. In this episode, we'll hear them discuss the challenges and opportunities that come with self-implementing EOS. We're starting the show with JRT sharing how focusing on skill sets helped her and Jen distribute roles and responsibilities within their startup. Here we go. Hey everybody, today I have the pleasure of speaking with Vellenga and Jennifer Rettele-Thomas, who goes by JRT, founders of Voice First World. Voice First World helps their clients speak with presence versus perfection to help leaders harness the power of effective communication. So thanks for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what we're going to talk about today. So before we hop into all that, can you just tell me a little bit about Voice First World and what y'all do?
Yeah, we're a communication coaching company. So think executive coaching through the lens of communication and speaking with presence. So I'm a stage director by trade, and I think of stage presence as being about location-based and executive presence being individual-based. And if you're not an executive, sometimes you think, well, I'm not an executive, I can't have executive presence. And we know that it's actually more about how you show up in the place. So anyway, we do one-on-one and group coaching for professionals and leaders on communication and executive coaching.
So what does presence being more important than speaking with perfection, what does that piece of it mean?
Yeah, no one's perfect. And I think what happens is a lot of people, as we've gotten to a space where we have to speak more on, like we're doing now on Zoom, online, we are speaking more than we're writing. And I think people get worried because public speaking isn't something that they were taught, maybe in a public speaking class in college, but people get very nervous. It's one of those big fears of human beings is speaking publicly. And so you don't have to do it perfectly. And if you know that, then you can show up as your authentic self and be present and listen and be with human beings and communicate well. And then all those imperfect things, like whether you say or not, or if you have an accent, all the things that really don't matter in the long run, those things go away because you're simply present.
Cool. I like that. There's hope for me.
We'll talk later, Mark.
You're making
Mark.
A list.
I got a list. Can you tell I'm the integrator in this relationship?
I can see that. So, all right. So April, my producer, said that, you go by JRT and Gen V. So for our listeners, that's what I'm going to be calling them today. So JRT, back over to you for a sec as you're making your list. I'm going to distract you from your list for a minute. So you I know a lot of your clients are female, right? Yeah. So you noticed a difference, April shared with me, kind of between your female clients and your male clients. What was it?
Oh, well, Mark, this is another one for Jen as the visionary, but I'm going to go and then I'm going to let Jen correct me, as the visionary. But the reality was when we worked together for 10 years prior to launching our work, and the reality again is that we worked with so many different leaders, men and women at the senior level. And the common denominator, especially during COVID, right, when we were having to show up on video, was that men were always showing up overly confident and underprepared. And the women were showing up the opposite here. So they were showing up overprepared and underconfident. And we were like, between Jen's skills and my skills, we were like, we have the answer. We know how to fix this. So let's go out and see if we can make a change.
So explain that to me. So why do you think it is that men would show up in an opposite way from the women would show up? I mean, it's not obvious to me.
Well,
Gen V.
I'll tell you through a story, Mark. Just think about entrepreneurship and just even think about this podcast and how often you have a visionary who's male and an integrator who's female. And sometimes you'll have a team. I haven't done the math. I would have I ran out of time to do the stats on this, but it would be interesting to see if you have any pairs that are a female visionary and a male integrator. So even just in entrepreneurship, I started my career as an actor, and it wasn't until I was past college working as a professional actor that a mentor said to me, "You're actually a director." And I was like, I can be a director? No, I've been acting forever. And then it wasn't until I was 30 that I went back to grad school for an MFA in directing. And a directing degree for the stage is really a leadership degree. And so people didn't tell me. I think of it now. I'm in my 50s now, and I wasn't an entrepreneur until we stepped away in 2021. So you don't get told, at least Gen X women, maybe it's changing now, but you don't get told what your strengths are in the visionary space. You are a visionary if you're in theater and you're doing new play development, if you're a director. And in the theater world, there's also already an alignment of integrator and visionary, and that's the director and the stage manager. And it's a beautiful model that works well, even if they don't use the same EOS terminology. So you ask the question of why is it that men and women are different in this way? I think we haven't been trained the same way. I think that we get supported and we get told who we are, and we believe that. And that's so much of the work that we do with our women clients, is to make sure they know who they are, especially as they've risen in leadership levels in their careers.
Interesting. So you feel it's a culture thing.
I do. Yeah.
It's a nurture thing more than a nature thing.
Yeah.
So interestingly, the interview that I did just before this was a female visionary and a male integrator.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's funny that you should ask that.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. So quickly, just a little more context for our audience. So give them a sense of the size of your organization in terms of employees.
Yeah. So Jen and I are the co-founders. So it is the two of us. And then we're small. And then we have 4 independent contractors.
And so how does that work? So what do your independent contractors do? What do you bring them onto the team for?
Yeah. So Jen and I, as you know, as a startup company, we really looked at our skill sets and divide and conquered those. And then we said, okay, what are those things that we really need to bring in some expertise? So it's going to be anywhere from our podcast editing and social media editing, because Jen can do a lot of the creative, but we hire out that final editing. We have a graphic artist that we work with for the design. Then we also have, this wouldn't be independent, but I don't want to forget it, as far as some of the legal work that we do that falls outside of our scope of work, which is really important in the startup. And then, Jen, I'm drawing a blank on our 4th.
We have some
writer.
ads marketing. We have a marketing consultant, somebody who runs our ads. Yeah.
Yeah.
That falls under Jen.
Well, so yeah. So how many different seats do each of you sit in on the accountability chart?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
Is that an easy answer without
JRT's
pulling it out and
gonna.
looking at
She'll
it?
probably
it
pull
right
it up.
here.
She's gonna pull that up.
I've got it right here in our thing. We're broke. I think we're a little high, but we are about 8 and 8.
You're each in 8 seats?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my word.
But
So that's easy.
we're bootstrapping in a startup, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's how would you describe the complexity of trying to keep 8 hats straight?
Well, what we typically say is I am creative and coaching. And so if in our business, I'm the product, because it's my coaching and my creative, and she's sales and operations and relationships. So how do we keep all of that straight? Well, JRT will often say to me, you shouldn't have any rocks. Like, how am I not supposed to have any rocks? Because there's 2 of us. I don't know, JRT, how do we keep it straight?
Well, this is not us doing a promotional for EOS. I know that, but I think I'm just saying, I was not paid to say this. But our first year, that would have been a very difficult part for me to answer, because we were just trying to figure it out. And both her and I came from leadership positions. So we had very different ways that we had organized ourselves. And then we had both heard of EOS. EOS was introduced to us. And that was the first time when we started that in February of 2023, that we really could look at what our skill sets were and create the accountability chart. And so now when we do our level 10s or we do our quarterly meetings or our annual meetings, however you want to look at the EOS structure, we really are holding each other accountable to our skill sets. So we had to make some, like all businesses, we had to make some adjustments on the accountability chart. When we started, we thought we were X, and then we were like, no, really, I'm not good at that. That needs to be Gen V, and Gen V vice versa. And being able to make those changes in our quarterly meetings or whatever that looks like has been like a relief. And then when we question who we are or question kind of our expertise, it's nice to go back to that accountability chart to be reminded of that. And then as the business has grown, it's like, okay, yeah, we did put ourselves in the right seats, and we're going to always have to be making changes as we grow.
And when do we hire on? Because that is
hire?
the next big step for us, is when we start hiring people.
Yeah. And which seat first?
We know which seat first. Which seat first, JRT?
Coaching.
Oh my God, I would say sales.
No.
See, this is like the newlywed game. One of you wrote down a different answer than the other.
It's always for each other.
Right. So I love, Gen V, how you had kind of a simplified way of thinking about, okay, I do this stuff, she does that stuff, and sort of categorizing it at a high level, but you've got the detailed answer in your accountability chart that you can go to really get clear. When I think about, 8 seats a piece or 8 hats a piece, though, I live in Dallas. And so, when I'm flying through the airport here, sometimes I'll see a traveler that's been to the Stetson store.
Oh, yeah.
And they've had some kind of a fancy cowboy hat made, and maybe they've had cowboy hats made for a bunch of friends back home. And, those things are kind of hard to pack. And so what they do is they stack them. And so you'll have somebody that'll literally have like 5 or 6 cowboy hats stacked up on top of their head. So that's kind of the picture I get of you two when you're trying to wear 8 hats. So, you're going through this startup phase, but you're getting clarity, and now you're starting to think about, all right, what's the next hire? Where are we going to, unlock the most opportunity, or maybe, offload the most pain by bringing another great person into the team. So I love hearing how you're thinking about that. Now, April also mentioned from the pre-call that you find each other quote, endlessly fascinating and endlessly infuriating. So can you explain that phrase to me?
Yes. Who do you think came up with that? That would definitely be the visionaries.
Let's hear the story.
Yeah, so I am married to an introvert. I'm happy to say we've been married for 29 years, and I'm an extrovert. And I always have said that I find my husband and someone who's opposite of me endlessly fascinating and endlessly infuriating, and it keeps it interesting, And so then when I got a business partner in JRT, I said, it's the same, endlessly fascinating. I don't understand. As we first started, you've heard this many times on your podcast, but at the beginning I was like, okay, I'm really sorry that you have to do this part of the business because this is the grossest part, but are you okay to take it? And she would be like, oh my God, I'm in my happy place, So endlessly fascinating that someone would like some of that garbage that she has to do, and endlessly infuriating because I'm difficult.
Well, she really owned that, didn't she, JRT?
She did.
So what's your version of it? So is she in fact endlessly fascinating to you?
Absolutely. I mean, I put into perspective that there is no business without Gen V. When we were coming up with the vision for the company, I mean, that was her beautiful sweet spot, was coming up with that vision for the company. And for me, with my strengths, coming up with the execution steps were so natural, but I have no execution steps unless we have a vision. And so I find that to be a great joy. Now, the infuriating part, I think it's when those to-dos are just, as Gen V will say, is it an exact date? Because everything's movable, right? Like everything, like, is this an exact date you're giving me? I mean, because I kind of feel like it'd be flexible in the week. And I'm like, no, I set the to-do date. That's the to-do date. So that's probably the one thing that's infuriating, which is pretty minor in the big scheme of things. But that's how visionaries are, and keeping them on track.
That's why we don't want them to have rocks too.
That's
right?
true.
But the deal is, Gen V, is when you're sitting in 8 seats, only one of those is the visionary seat, and those other seats, unfortunately, do need to get rocks sometimes.
Oh, no.
Isn't it painful to hear that?
Yeah, and I don't think we do this as much anymore, JRT, but you are welcome to correct me. I think in the early days, I would be like, well, I guess we didn't say this. I would like to just say we came from higher education, where JRT was an AVP of development at a university foundation, and I was a chair of a theater department. And when you're in higher ed and theater, you work 14 hours a day because you're at higher ed, faculty meetings at 8 a.m. and you're at rehearsal until 11 o'clock at night. And she had a very busy job as well. And so she brought me in, she hired me because she does have some vision and said, I want more creative opportunities in the way we say thank you to donors. And so we started this 10-year relationship where people said to us, you two have something really fascinating. And she would step back and say, I'm not the creative here. You're the expert in this creative piece. You do that, but I'll make sure it all happens. And so we don't have to go into any more of that. But the long and short is, in the beginning, I would say things like the same in higher ed when there's so much to do. It's like, do you want me to do this or this? Which is your priority? Because I can't do both. So pick the one that's a priority. And she'd be like, both. I can't do both. So I don't think we do that as much anymore. I think we're way better at implementing, being self-implementers of the EOS system, and our tasks, even just this last quarter, have gotten so much better. But yeah, I recognize I'm the problem. I get in the way of the growth of the business because I'm just trying to think of the next thing and ideate, and I know that certain things have to get done. And I mostly stay in the lane where I do the things that I enjoy, which is not always the thing that's moving us forward.
So the relationship obviously predates, EOS, predates this business. You kind of learned about each other, and probably instinctively kind of the way that the roles fit together, right?
Yeah.
And then you find out about EOS. Let's talk about that. How did you find out about EOS?
I will go. I'm going to go on this one. So Jen had purchased the book. So she had heard of it. She had the book traction. She purchased the book Rocket Fuel. This is like in mid 2022.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're just helping you out. So that was like in May of 2022. And then by chance, we have a podcast and we interview a variety of different individuals. And one of the women that we interviewed said, oh my gosh, you have to meet Mary Tatimas, which is an EOS integrator.
Sure.
So of course we interviewed her. What do? We asked for some other things. She introduces us to Lisa Gonzalez. And through both of those interviews, really got to know more about their work as EOS implementers and decided this is something we really needed to dive into. And we dove into Rocket Fuel. We dove into the other systems. We use EOS University, and as the integrator,
yep.
We downloaded all the assets and just started implementing those. And so in February of 23 is when we officially started. And I will tell you what it did for our business, even from a profit standpoint, was significant. I can't imagine where we'd be if we didn't have the structure, even though we know what structure looks like. It's just a very simplified process that keeps us going. And the great news is when you get stuck, what I love about it is that EOS is always providing new updates and new information. So we can continue to upgrade our work through the EOS system.
What would it take to run your business more effectively and even more profitably? Having a virtual assistant trained in EOS can play a key role in your success. AssistPro offers tailored to you right fit solutions, including matching with a virtual assistant based on your communication and working style, coaching through your delegation journey, and for those who already have an assistant, training and professional development opportunities to elevate your assistant's support of your business. Get the $25 an hour work off your plate and give it to an assistant who truly understands and appreciates EOS. Visit assistpro.com and discover your right fit solution. So talk about the challenges of self-implementing EOS, right? So, we don't hide anything. All the answers are kind of in the books, right?
Yeah.
But it's tough when you got to learn it yourself and teach it to yourself and do it yourself, right? So talk about that a little bit. What's What's it like to self-implement EOS?
Well, I think JRT is the one who's putting it all together. We use Notion, and we downloaded a template for the EOS L10 and same page meeting and all of the pieces. I will say though, I just have to tell you, behind me, I don't know how much of this is on video, but behind me, I get 40 books from.
I love that. Very well done.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
Thank you. But, I just found it. I was going to say I couldn't find process. I was like, of course I can't find process. Why would I read process, even though it's Lisa and Mike Payton's book?
Right.
I'm like, why would I find that? But I'm actually looking over to the side and I can see it sitting there. So I read, and I'll go back and I'll read Traction again. I'll read Rocket Fuel again, and I'll go, JRT, look at this chapter. And I typically will listen on Audible first. And then if I want more, I'll get the book. And so I actually started listening to Rocket Fuel this quarter again, the book. And I might.
What speed?
Yeah.
What speed
I
do you
do.
listen at?
What speed? 2, as fast as I can go.
There you go.
You know
There you go.
know the answer to that.
There you go.
Right?
This is you're fitting the pattern very nicely.
And JRT's like, can you not put it? I'll go listen to this part, and she's like, please put it on 1. But I'll come and say, I don't think we're doing this part right, and she'll go, okay, let me figure this out. So we are always evaluating. And where are we, JRT? I'd say we're 50% there. In terms
I give us
how
our
we-
credit. I would give us a higher percentage. I'd say 70.
Okay.
I'm going to say 70. And I would say, Mark, I'm going to answer this very simple, and it's a very mundane answer. But I think for us, when you think about the issues, the to-dos, when you think about the scorecard and all of those aspects, I think just when you would actually have an implementer helping you, from the beginning, you always question yourself, is this right? Are we breaking down the rocks right and giving ourselves, as 2 people? Because I think we started off with way too many rocks, and we learned over time that we had to narrow it down, that it was stupid to have 7 or 8 rocks like hats. And so we've made that adjustment. And then just recently, Jen just mentioned this, is that this may sound really silly, but it has changed our life in the last month. Is even though we read the book and we follow the notebook that I've downloaded, when it came to issues, for me as the integrator, I always have a ton of questions. And so the issues was a dumping ground for us, for me, not Jen, for me. And it wasn't correlated to our rocks. And so we were spending way too much time on the things that were not moving our rocks forward. And so we just implemented how it should have been done the first time, with the 7 days, although we went out 14. That 7-day window, don't tell anybody, a 7-day window. And in already a month, as we've started this quarter, can't believe we're finishing the month out, the difference in our productivity in our meeting has been a complete game changer. But I think it took us a year to figure that out because we didn't have an implementer.
Interesting. So you lead me to another question, which is kind of, okay, where do you we call it purity when somebody, when you implement EOS the way it was intended, which we know works, where do you get your purity checks? So how do you read it, you learn it, you're interpreting it in one way, but again, you're kind of on your own doing it. So where do you get kind of that check that says, oh, okay, hang on, we're not doing this exactly the way it was intended, or here's something we missed or whatever? Where do you get those reality checks to help bring you back on track?
We might answer this differently, but quarterly meetings, number 1, quarterly meetings is where we get that. And actually we hold L10s consistently. Sometimes we might move the date just because we have something come up, but Tuesdays at 10:00 is really the time. And we hold that sacred. I mean, sometimes I'm late, Mark, but usually not very late. And she's okay with it most of the time. But no,
Coach Lombardi would be so disappointed in you.
So the L10 is very clear. The quarterly keeps us pure. We're not pure yet, but I also say Lisa Gonzalez, we said we interviewed her. She was episode 44. Right. I only know that because JRT gave me notes. Episode 44 of the Speak with Presence podcast. I will sometimes text Lisa and say, Lisa, are we doing this right? And she might give me a check-in. We do want an implementer at some point. It's just, you have to decide. And we have been very good in the 3 years we've been in business of getting coaching, but it's, where do you need it the most?
Where do you spend it?
Yeah.
Yep. So and Lisa's fantastic. And so that's what I was looking for, is the external check, because it's kind of like the four walls decision making, where if we just sit and look at our own four walls and just talk to us, sometimes we can go wildly in the wrong direction. But having that some kind of an outside check. So okay, so you check in with Lisa. JRT, is there something else that came to mind for you?
Well, outside what she said, for me, the affirmation is what I find is the EOS, whether it's the university or just Googling a variety of things on the EOS platform, is that you guys, the team provides updates. There's always things that are new or better ways to do them. So like when we did our last quarterly meeting, all they did, I have the format from when we started a year and a half ago of here's how you run your quarterly meeting, here's the things, here's your agenda. But when I Googled it the last time, it brought up a slightly different format. It wasn't that much different, but it was literally that change in format that made me go, we're not doing the issues and the to-dos right. And again, it was just a slight formatting word change. And we started the quarterly meeting and I said, Jen, I don't know why we haven't caught this beforehand, but it was just the way it was written. So it's just the new ways of looking at the information that EOS is providing, which is a lot.
So you mentioned Rocket Fuel University, which of course is specifically focused on the visionary and the integrator and helping them get clear and learn.
Yep.
So what in there, what resources or tools or whatever have you found most helpful?
I've got the notebook.
Yeah, go to the notebook.
But let Jen go first. The notebook.
Gen V, you start while she's pulling out the notebook.
For me, it's a philosophical check-in. Like it's usually for me, how am I being a jerk? What am I doing to get in the way of us? How am I in the way? Or because I had a mentor say to me recently, I don't even know if JRT knows this. I had a mentor say to me recently, have you ever been satisfied? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, have you ever been satisfied? And JRT asked me the other day, when you do plays, so in theater, in business, you can kind of scooch out your timeline, your deadline. People do it all the time. Well, we have this thing we're launching. We can push it a little. Maybe people are disciplined and they don't. Some entrepreneurs, they're very disciplined. But in theater, you have an audience coming. You don't get to push. You have to stop. And I know what actors can manage and certain actors can manage. So I stop tweaking when I think they've hit their threshold. It's usually the night before opening or, the last preview or whatever. So what happens is you have a deadline, and JRT said, does it end? And I said, no, I'm in the audience going like, I missed the boat. I'm always iterating. I will always iterate. And I know that. And that's how I'm trained. And so when it comes to our systems, I go, how do we iterate this? And it's usually about relationship, or how am I getting in your way, or how am I feeling in a box, and what can we do? So I go back to the books and go, where am I being difficult? And where is she stopping me from doing what I need? And this is hard. You've already said it. We're two people doing everything. So there are a lot of tensions, but we recognize from 10 years of working together is our differences are our strengths. Did that answer that?
That's pretty good. Absolutely. JRT, what'd you find in the notebook?
Well, I went to the things that I had sticky noted that I go back to all the time. And to keep us on track, which I've already mentioned, I think the section that really talks about the meeting pulse and that it breaks it down into each aspect. Of course, as the integrator, that is something I go back to time and time again. And as I just said, I search to see if there's any updates or changes to it, because that structure is the essence of how we function. So that to me is when I think about the overall system, that is the Bible for us.
So when you think about the visionary integrator part of everything specifically, right? So that relationship, and the Rocket Fuel's all about that structure, the 5 rules and the 5 tools. And so the educational resources around that. So we have IDS sessions, Q&A things where you can go on and with other people, right, that are either self-implementing or maybe they're working with an implementer, but just to kind of throw out a lot of times issues and questions that are specific to this whole VI thing.
Yeah.
Right. So is that something that's been helpful for you? Is that something that you've tapped into, and what do you get from that?
So I connected with Jen remind me of the group, the Women Integrators Group. FIM, that Lisa connected us to. So that was something that I have connected with. I've not taken it to the next step, but I follow a lot of them on LinkedIn. And so that has been powerful. Both of us have had some conversations, and I've had some one-on-ones with some members of that group. But I think what's from an integrator standpoint is the constant reminder, and I say this all the time to other women that we meet that haven't implemented EOS, is that you're an integrator and you're a unicorn and you're 1 in 4. And so don't forget the power that you bring to the table, even though there's a lot of times where you feel like you're just getting the task done.
Yeah.
And I think being in that integrators group, that's the power of that group is reminding yourself of your power and your importance in the relationship.
Yeah, the thing that goes along with that is, you're a rare commodity in the value equation, a scarce commodity in the value equation, but you're not alone.
No.
So there's other people like you that are out there wrestling with the same kinds of things that you are. And, so that's what, our rocket fuel integrator community is all about. And same thing on the visionary side. All right. So there's something else that I heard that was pretty interesting to me.
Wait, Mark, can you hold for just a second? Because I wanted to say one of your recent, I think the most recent or bonus podcast episode, you talk a lot about being equally yoked. And I think that's such an important term because, and I buy up all of the cards that have unicorns on them because I have to remind myself to tell her, you are a unicorn and I'm a dime a dozen. So when I'm being difficult, remember you are the secret sauce of this company, and send her these cards of being a unicorn. But being equally yoked from where we came in our higher ed profession means she actually hired me and we were very equal in different parts. We knew we had different parts on campus. So when we took the risk and stepped away as entrepreneurs, we came at it with an equal yoke. And so I think that is a really key piece. And you talk about it a lot. And I want to make sure people hear that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's important to be power matched, right? Too, where one doesn't just mow over the other, one doesn't look down on the other, but we're eye level, we're power matched, we're equally yoked, we're in this thing together, and it's a true meeting of the minds and partnership to make it go. So I'm curious, 2 more questions. So one is, how has your relationship changed? So over the last, how old is this? Is Voice First World?
3 years. Going into our 4th year.
All right. So 3 years going into your 4th year, from the visionary integrator perspective, how is your relationship different today than it was when you started the business?
I know
you're
going to go.
Yeah.
Go.
I think for the biggest thing is for us is we knew our skill sets, but when you think about being entrepreneurs and starting the business and launching it, there were certain areas that I was like, oh, I am not good at that. That's totally you, Gen V, and vice versa. But it was through the accountability chart when we started implementing that. Again, we still had some of those issues where we put something under Gen V for a while, and then we decided that wasn't working and it went to me. And I think the dynamic has changed where we really, for right now, and I would say probably for the last 6 months to a year, we have really felt good in our seats in that accountability chart, where at the beginning, we were just trying to figure it out. So I feel like we have become better at knowing who we are, really what our strengths are, and really how through our strengths, we're helping grow the business and make a difference. And if we didn't have that, I think we'd still be floundering around and we'd be tossing jobs back and forth. But we now have a pretty concrete feel of what we need to do.
And what we shouldn't be doing.
Correct.
Because it's not related to a rock. And that can, like, we paused our podcast until 2025, which we don't need to get into all the reasons of that, but we evaluated and we made a decision. I'll say that because we worked together before and because we were friends, I think we were in, and we're both, April asked us, what do you do for fun? I was like, we both work all the time. We love, not because we're actually not workaholics, but we do love work. We did before. We are just wired that way, both of us. On our Strengths Quest, Strengths Finder, Gallup Strengths Finder, we are, I think of the 5, I think we both have 2 of our top 5s are the same. I think it's Achiever and Activator. are exactly the same, and then they really separate.
Differ.
So we're very different, but in terms of like achieving and activating is the same. But where I think how we've changed is we've separated. So before you were friends and we're in this business and we're helping women and leaders and we just love it and we're together all the time. And now I really feel like Friday afternoon, we just shut down and we don't talk to each other again until Monday. And
Wow.
I think that space of we are so different, so endlessly fascinating, endlessly infuriating, we have to step away or we will kill each other. Well, I'll kill you. You'll probably never kill me because you're nicer than me.
There it is. Before we leave, is there, folks want to find out more about either of you or your company, what's the best way for them to find you?
I think the best way is to go to voicefirstworld.com/links. And that gives you all of our links. We have a masterclass. We have a place where you can book a call with us to see if you're a good fit or if we're a good fit for you. And I should say we work with men. They usually find us, but our target market is women in leadership, executive positions on their communication and speaking presence, both as a leader and on stages. In fact, Lisa would be fine with us saying this. Us became a client because she was having to speak so much. So voicefirstworld.com/links, and all of our social media handles are there as well, which is just really Voice First World. And our podcast is Speak with Presence.
Great. JRT, did she miss anything?
No, she does good at that.
All right. Well, then I'm just counting on you to send me this list of all these notes that you've made for me for stuff I do wrong. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. But for today, I'm just deeply grateful to both of you for taking a little time out of your busy schedules to spend with us and help some people. So our listeners, we're all doing this together. And my vision is that we not all have to make all of the same mistakes, but we can share our stories, share our experiences, and hopefully learn a little bit from each other that helps us get there a little bit sooner, maybe with a little bit less pain. So I know you've done that for somebody today. So to our listeners, thanks for listening. We appreciate you taking your time to be here. And if you like what you're hearing, tell somebody, maybe do a review for a podcast, help somebody else find out about it. That way we can help even more people. So thanks again for this episode. And until next time, go rock it. All right. So fun conversation with Gen V and JRT. So now let's go to the toolbox and dive deeper on a couple of things. So one of the first things that I picked up out of this conversation ties back to the accountability chart. And, in their situation, again, they are early on startup company. They're still young, and they're in 8 different seats each, and all of those different hats. And so it just points back to how powerful it is to get that clarity on structure. Otherwise, it's just so easy to just kind of get caught up in the swirl of what's going on and who's doing what, and you step on each other, things get dropped, and all of that. So they had a really nice way to kind of tie that together with sort of some simple language around who does what at a high level, but then having that detailed resource to go, that detailed accountability chart tool to go back to see who really owns the thing, who really owns the stuff. So a lot of power in that. The next thing that struck me is, they're self-implementing EOS, which a lot of people do that. And for them, just kind of where they're at in the evolution of their business, they really have to be discriminating about where they invest. They believe in hiring coaches, but they're not to the point yet where they feel like they can afford to hire an EOS implementer. So they're kind of fighting through it on their own and doing the best they can. And gave one really interesting example of the level 10 meeting where it took a long time to really establish that discipline, in the proper way. And so they're working through it. They're giving their best effort, but it's just about sort of clarity and confidence. And I think JRT talked about, you're always kind of wondering, all right, am I missing something here? Is there something I'm not doing right? And there was one example where they kind of found out later, oh, wow, we were missing that. We were missing that piece of it. And so they pulled that back in, and it was sort of an unlock that really changed things for them and saved them a ton of time, created more focus. And she felt like in the last month, it had really had a big impact on their business. For them, they've got an implementer that they have a relationship with. They're not, engaged as their implementer, doing a full implementation, but it's somebody that they talk to just kind of get that, I called it a purity check, to just kind of make sure. So they've got a question that they needed to get cleared up. Am I doing this the right way? Is there something I'm missing? And so Lisa Gonzalez, who's a fantastic EOS implementer, was able to provide that for them based on the relationship that they have. So for those self-implementers out there, just look for that. Whether you're going to Rocket Fuel University, watching videos, following the EOS worldwide content, whatever it is, lots of different resources available to you out there that can help you get that reality check. Maybe it's going to an EOS conference and talking to other people that are running their company on EOS. We always find, people that attend the conference they'll discover, hey, I'm actually doing pretty good on this relative to everybody else I meet. And then they'll find something. It's like, wow, we're behind. These other people I meet seem to be way ahead of us in that particular tool or, key component of the EOS model, whatever it might be. So learning from others, as always, can help you. And that's why we do this. We do this podcast to learn from each other so we don't all have to make the same mistakes. So if you're getting something out of this, if this is helpful for you, let somebody know, right? And, please go to rocketfueluniversity.com. Take the assessments if you haven't to figure out if this is something that can help you do more of whatever it is you're wanting to do, and look at the tools that we have there available to you, and join our community of visionaries and integrators, again, where you can learn from each other and we can get there faster and make an even bigger difference in the world. So thanks for listening to this episode. And until next time, go rock it. You cannot build a great business on multiple operating systems. You must choose one. EOS 1 is the simple-to-use software exclusively from the makers of EOS. By bringing everything EOS into one place, EOS 1 allows you to run better meetings, access the foundational tools faster, and build a more accountable team. One vision, one system, one team. Start your 30-day free trial of EOS 1 today at eos1.com.